Tonight, because of what we did on this day, in this election, at this defining moment, change has come to America. We are 5 days away from fundamentally transforming the United States of America.
The way Bush has done it over the last 8 years, added $4 trillion by his lonesome, that's irresponsible. It's unpatriotic. We cannot and will not sustain deficits like these without end. That's why today I'm pledging to cut the deficit we inherited by half by the end of my first term in office. That's why today I'm pledging to cut the deficit we inherited by half by the end of my first term in office. We are paying the price for these deficits right now.
How bad has he been? Where does Barack Obama rank in your mind, you who know so much history, among the worst American presidents?
He has displaced Jimmy Carter from that position.
The worst?
The worst.
Worse than James Buchanan?
Yes.
Worse than Richard Nixon?
Yes.
All right.
Richard Nixon did not, after all, put us in danger of nuclear attacks, probably within the lifetime of people living today.
The Iran deal will do that?
Yes.
All right.
We're committed to stopping the Israelis from stopping the Iranians from getting a nuclear weapon. That's part of the deal.
When asked who was the worst president since World War II, 33% said Obama.
President Obama has been rated the worst president since World War II. 33% said that President Obama is the worst president we have had.
We gave a black man the highest prize in the universe, and then after that we gave him the Nobel Prize for Peace, even though he didn't earn it. We gave to him everything that he needed to succeed. We gave him everything that he needed to succeed. We gave him everything he needed to lead his people. We gave him everything he needed to help black people. We gave him everything he needed to change the world and the dynamics of black people. We gave him everything to heal slavery. We gave him the presidency, and we gave him the Nobel Prize for Peace. We gave him everything. And the nigger failed.
He's going to go down as being one of the worst presidents ever. President Barack needs to pay attention to Chicago. If he cannot pay attention to Chicago and the African American community, he needs to resign. The president setting aside all of these funds for immigrants and forsaken African American community and African American families, I think that's a disgrace. He saw this as a state senator, and he did not pay attention then.
Mr. President, we're asking for you. We got a problem here in Chicago. We will not stand by this here and keep letting this senseless killing and shooting happening in our community.
Are you happy with the way that Obama has been running the country? You a fan?
No.
No?
No, I really think he misinterpreted his mandate. He's doubled down on a lot of things. Well, going back to that education thing, one of the things, if I were the Adjustment Bureau, this idea that we're testing kids and we're tying teachers' salaries to how the kids are performing on tests. It's just, it's a really, you know, That kind of mechanized thinking has nothing to do with higher order thinking. We're training them, we're not teaching them.
I'm against his silence on Iran. I'm against Obama's lie that he was going to protect Israel, and now as president, he arrogantly tells them what they can do and what they can't do, as he forgot that our only hope to defend us against Iran's nuclear buildup is Israel. And I'm against his very cunning ability to push things, to rush things through without anybody having a chance to look at them. His stimulus package has failed. Slowly but surely, we can see that Obama's policies are failing.
This poll is just one more round of bad news for the president. 22% say their vote for a House candidate will be a vote for the president, but 32% say it will be a vote against him. And 2 years ago, independent voters played a vital role in President Obama's victory, but this year, 47% of independent voters plan to vote Republican.
The White House is trying to say that this is not a referendum on Barack Obama. Of course this is a referendum on Barack Obama.
CNN is now ready to make a major projection. The Republicans will take control of the House of Representatives.
My administration will not rest until every American can find a job.
This is the worst economic recovery America has ever had. Unemployment soared over 8%, and it has stayed over 8% for 41 months in a row. It's 8.2 right now.
Obama pulls out U.S. troops. That gives the terrorists time to conspire, consolidate, and plan for filling the void. When the U.S. unilaterally pulls out, it creates a vacuum that necessarily will be filled. And that's what's happened in Iraq.
The protestations of Obama himself in his speech to the children in Northern Ireland about peace, when he said, "Those who choose the path of peace, I promise you that the United States of America will support you every step of the way. We will be the wind at your back." Now I ask you, is this person going for the Hypocrite of the Century award? And the reality is that by any serious examination, this man is a war criminal. He has just announced his decision to supply arms to the Syrian opposition, including the jihadists, fueling the destabilization of that region.
Barack Obama blamed his European allies for not stopping Libya from becoming a, quote, mess. He went as far as to call his allies free riders.
Very rare that a serving president of the US would criticise, particularly his allies, of course, in this way. He's criticising here the UK and French leaders, and essentially what he's saying is that he blames them for Libya becoming what is called in polite diplomatic circles in the US a mess.
Islamic State is also active in the country, and a recent UN report claims the group strengthened its foothold in the region. The document adds the rise of extremists is likely to increase international interference and provoke even further polarization.
He will go down in history, President Obama, as one of the worst foreign policy presidents ever. He called me into the Oval Office before the election, and he said to me, "Alan, I want your support, and I have to tell you, I will always have Israel's back." I didn't realize what he meant is that he would have his back to stab them in the back. And what he did was so nasty, he pulled a bait and switch. He said to the American public, "Oh, this is all about the settlements deep in the West Bank." And yet he allowed his representative to the UN to abstain, which is really for, a resolution that says the Jews can't pray at the Western Wall. Jews can't live in the Jewish quarter where they've lived for thousands of years. And he's going to say, "Whoops, I didn't mean that." Well, read the resolution. You're a lawyer.
Is President Obama better or worse than Jimmy Carter?
Worse. Easily worse.
I agree. I mean, so far, you would have to say that he's the worst president in United States history, with the possible exception. The only one who may not be is James Buchanan. Maybe James Buchanan.
Well, and the thing is, I think here we are. People can't wait until November. They can't. They're practically lining up the polls now. They can't wait to go and vote. The only thing is, people wish that Barack Obama was up for re-election right now, because they would honestly love to have a chance to throw him out of office. Everywhere I go, people ask me, "Michelle, can we impeach the president?"
Yesterday, 4 of these extraordinary Americans were killed in an attack on our diplomatic post in Benghazi. Among those killed was our ambassador. The United States condemns in the strongest terms this outrageous and shocking attack.
Mr. President,
This morning, you went out of your way to avoid the use of the word terrorism in connection with the Libya attack.
Right.
Do you believe that this was a terrorist attack?
Well, it's too early to know exactly how this came about, what group was involved, but obviously it was an attack. The day after the attack, Governor, I stood in the Rose Garden and I told the American people and the world that we were going to find out exactly what happened, that this was an act of terror, and I also said that we're going to hunt down those who committed this crime.
I think it's interesting the president just said something which is that on the day after the attack, he went to the Rose Garden and said that this was an act of terror.
That's what I said.
You said in the Rose Garden, the day after the attack, it was an act of terror. It was not a spontaneous demonstration. Is that what you're saying?
Please proceed, Governor.
I want to make sure we get that for the record, because it took the president 14 days before he called the attack in Benghazi an act of terror.
It's been described as a mob action, but there are reports that they were very heavily armed with grenades.
As I
that
said,
doesn't sound like your normal demonstration.
Right. As I said, we're still investigating exactly what happened. I don't want to jump the gun on this.
President's policies failing the black community or helping?
It's failing. It's failing.
The people who are having the hard time right now are middle-income Americans. Under the president's policies, middle-income Americans have been buried. They're just being crushed. Middle-income Americans have seen their income come down by $4,300.
4 years ago, I promised to end the war in Iraq. I did. 4 years ago, I promised to end the war in Iraq, and I did. I told you we'd end the war in Iraq. We did.
President, do you have any second thoughts about pulling all ground troops out of Iraq?
Yeah, you know what I just find interesting is the degree to which this issue keeps on coming up, as if this was my decision.
Where was the anger in that President Obama press conference? I'm in Paris. His words fell shamefully short of sentiment here. Wall Street Journal writes, if Mr. Obama fought the Islamic State with half the vigor in which he delivers moral lectures, he'd find that a much less fearful America would welcome far more refugees. The French declare as an act of war, the president calls a setback. And what Dianne Feinstein says keeps her up at night.
Yeah, no, that was...
The president says, I'm too busy for that.
I've never been more concerned. I read the intelligence faithfully. ISIL is not contained. ISIL is expanding. They've just put out a video saying it is their intent to attack this country. And I think we have to be prepared. There's only one way we're going to diminish them, and that is by taking them out, because they are growing. They are in more than a dozen countries now. They are sophisticated.
Well, I supported Barack Obama in 2008. I contributed to his campaign. I was very excited about him. I thought he was a moderate. I thought that his election would promote racial healing in the country. It would be a tremendous transformation of attitudes. And instead, there's been one thing after another. Not least, I consider him one of the most now racially divisive and polarizing figures ever. Okay, I think it's going to take years to undo the damage he's done to relations between the races. But beyond that, I'm just sick and tired of the endless war. Okay, I was in favor of bombing the hell out of the Afghanistan mountains after 9/11, but I would never have agreed to this land war in Afghanistan, this endless land war, as well as things like the Libyan incursion, okay, that Obama appears to have been pushed into by these women like Hillary Clinton and Samantha Power. Right? The chaos of the foreign policy, the bowing to foreign leaders, also the Obamacare. Of course, we need health care reform in this country. What a mess! Everyone agrees about that. But the Obamacare is, to me, a Stalinist intrusion, okay, into American culture. The creation of this culture of surveillance from these bureaucracies, which is also carried over into Obama's endorsement of drones on the military level, as well as for police, control of the population. I mean, I don't understand how any fellow veteran of the 1960s who's a Democrat could not see the dangers here. Okay, that Obama is a statist. It's exactly what Bob Dylan was warning about in Subterranean Homesick Blues. Okay.
You said you are Barack Obama's worst nightmare. Why?
Well, I understand him. I understand what's going on. I understand the mindset. They do not want to run against me. I get it, and he doesn't get it. And I watched that speech yesterday. I thought it was an outrage. That wasn't a speech on deficit. That was a political speech. That means he's running, and that was his first speech. I thought it was ridiculous, raising taxes and really not doing anything having to do with the deficit. I thought it was an outrage. And look, he's been a horrible president. I always said the worst president was Jimmy Carter. Guess what? Jimmy Carter goes to second place. Barack Obama has been the worst president ever. The history of this country, Barack Obama is number one.
So here's Obama, and here's the end. He's not finished yet. Isn't that a terrible, no, seriously, isn't that a terrible picture? Look at that. Home ownership. So you take a look at what's happened. That's the American dream right there, folks. And then they wonder why 25,000 people come to my rallies.
Mr. President, there's a reason we think you're the worst president in recent history. We don't trust you. We don't believe you. We don't think you're capable of leading the country.
CNN projects the Republicans will take control of the United States Senate. They will be in the majority in the next United States Senate.
This is a Republican wave. There is no other way to look at it. And though there was anti-incumbent sentiment out there, the Republican incumbents, Snyder in Michigan, Scott in Florida, Scott Walker in Wisconsin, they won.
It came into this night with all 435 seats in the House and 36 seats in the Senate up for grabs.
And it ends with the Republican sweep taking control of the House and the Senate.
Bob Schieffer, the mood of the country was a major factor tonight.
The mood of the country was nasty, and the country took most of it out on Barack Obama. This was a referendum on Barack Obama.
Obviously, Republicans had a good night. American people sent a message. So to everyone who voted, I want you to know that I hear you.
President Obama releasing the Taliban Dream Team from Guantanamo Bay. Top advisors don't deny the 5 detainees traded for Bo Bergdahl were not hardened Taliban killers, but all 5 detainees were active Taliban fighters and planners. 3 held leadership posts in the Taliban government.
What is your response to critics who say the $400 million in cash that you sent to Iran was a ransom payment? Was it really simply a pure coincidence that a sum that was a payment that was held up for almost 4 decades was suddenly sent at the exact same time that the American prisoners were released? And can you assure the American people that none of that money went to support terrorism?
Okay. It's been interesting to watch this story surface.
Iran should not be have a nuclear, should not be a military nuclear power. I'm the Prime Minister of Israel.
When you walk out of the White House and 2 hours later, the White House press secretary and the State Department spokeswoman both slam Israel, talk about poison, how does that make you feel?
Well, it doesn't make me feel good.
How can you, with a straight face, make the argument that more guns will make us safer?
During this time, while you've been president, we are at the lowest murder rate in our country, all-time low of murders. We're at an all-time high of gun ownership.
Small Oregon town, united in grief, finds itself divided over a visit by the President of the United States. As President Obama arrives to meet with the victims' families privately, there is a public display of disdain for him.
Obama, I never thought he was qualified to be president, but the one thing I thought he'd be good at is being a cheerleader for the country. Actually, he's very divisive.
The man is trying to drive man against woman, woman against man, black against white, white against black, Christian against Jew, Muslim against Christian. I have never seen anything like this.
Barack Obama has been terrible from beginning to end. He's divided us along racial and sexual lines. He's divided us along every line he could find. He came in with a great promise. Because the expectations for Obama were so high and he fell so short, he's really divided America. I think he's trolled the Republican Party into irrelevance, and I think that he's taken his own party to Bernie Sanders' land. And I think that, you know, he's done that through policy, but he's mostly done that through his style. When Obama was elected, there was this great hope that he was finally going to help conciliate the greatest conflict that has ever torn the nation, the racial conflict, right? And instead he came in on the basis and governed on the basis that if you oppose him, it must be because you are black. And if there are imbalances in terms of equality, that is inequity. Right? Inequality equals inequity. So if more black people than white people are going to prison proportionately, that must be because people are racist. It can't just be because too many black people are committing crimes. Right? So by doing that, he's divided people along these lines, and it's you can see it in the Gallup polls. I mean, people now feel that the racial conflict in the country is at heights it hasn't been for decades. That to me is the most damaging thing, is that he's reverted American politics to a form of tribalism that I find very scary.
Well, you're attacking President Obama before he's even had a chance. He won in the
Hey, schmuck, listen to me. I'm not your weak father. Let me tell you like it is, schmuck. Obama has passed 5 executive orders. He's jammed through $1 trillion spending bill. It doesn't matter whether it was done in 1 week or in 4 years. Don't tell me I have to wait 100 days. If I wait 100 days, there'll be no country left.
He's doing what he was elected to do.
He was not elected to rob the Treasury. Didn't this man say he would not appoint lobbyists? He said that 2 days ago.
The people are sick of nothing.
Wait a minute. Shut up. Shut your mouth. Do you understand that you are an idiot? You're the dupe that he wanted. You're the chinless wonders that elected him.
As you stand in that room, you will be looking out over a room that arguably is as divided as it has ever been. Do you see that as a failure of your presidency? You came to town saying it was about hope and change. You were going to change the tone in Washington. You wanted to unite people, and they're not united. Is it a failure?
It's a regret.
Barack Obama said over the weekend that the biggest mistake of his presidency was the lack of planning for the aftermath of Muammar Gaddafi's ousting in Libya. Obama explained that his worst mistake was failing to plan for the day after what he thought was the right thing to do in intervening in Libya.
And the nation has not been as divided as it is now under Obama that it has been since the Civil War, in my estimation. You let that percolate through America. This man, Obama, has divided this country greater than anyone since the Civil War has done. He's ripped the country in pieces in only 1 year. The imposter has torn the nation apart, turning family against family, brother against sister, father against son, state against state, state against nation, nation against state, one nation against another. He is the most divisive man in the history of the American people. And you buy that garbage that he's a love peace man? You fool you?
To avoid being mistaken for such a sellout, I chose my friends carefully. The more politically active black students, the foreign students, the Chicanos, the Marxist professors, the Marxist professors, the Marxist professors.
Virtually everything the 44th president has accomplished during his 6 years in office is designed to cause harm to our free economy. From Obamacare to Dodd-Frank, from the Obama EPA to so-called climate change. All of it has its roots in Marxist socialist philosophy. Simply put, redistribution of wealth. And there is more on the way. The new Obama regulatory schedule for the upcoming fiscal year is out, and guess what? It reads like it was written by Joseph Stalin. Dozens and dozens of new regulations costing you and me at least $110 billion more. That's on top of all the other confiscatory regulations imposed on we the people since 2009. It's incredible. Of course, these regulations include the Obama effort to crush coal-fired power plants, but there's more, a lot more. How about new standards for your dishwasher, costing about $7 billion? Or how about new CO2 standards for your furnace? That's another $12 billion. Now, these strangling regulations, in the end, affect all of us. When the cost of doing business goes up, we pay the tab because those costs are passed on to us.
My top priority as president is to grow the economy and help more hardworking Americans get ahead.
Stop the tape. I am honestly amazed that they keep pushing, they being the White House, keep pushing this narrative that he cares about the American people. Because if you care about the economy, necessarily you care about the American people. He doesn't care about us. He cares about his agenda. And his top priority is and always has been, till the day he leaves office, his fundamental transformation of this country into some sort of liberal utopia that doesn't exist and will never exist. That's his top priority. Roll tape.
And after the worst economic crisis in our lifetimes.
Stop the tape. Again, we've established over and over again that this is a false narrative. It was not the worst of our lifetimes. If you're old enough, the worst of our lifetime, certainly his lifetime and my lifetime, was the Jimmy Carter recession that Ronald Reagan inherited in around 1980-81. That was worse. Double-digit inflation, double-digit interest rates, double-digit unemployment. Roll tape.
Businesses have now created 12.6 million new jobs over the past 63 months.
Stop the tape. A third narrative. It's beyond my scope of understanding. 63 months. I think we're all relatively intelligent people, at least in this audience, and we can do the math. Barack Obama has been in office not 63 months. He's been in office 77 months. So why would you quote employment figures that only go back 63 months and not 77 months? Let me take a guess. Maybe they're not as rosy when you look at the entire Obama presidency. If you want to see a rosy recovery, a real recovery from recession, look no further than Ronald Reagan. It was sustained for 25 years. The recovery began right around 1982, and it didn't end in the 80s. It didn't end in the 90s. Yeah, there were some blips in the early 90s. It didn't end until the turn of the century. Our economy grew because of Ronald Reagan equal to the size of West Germany back then in the 1980s. West Germany still existed. And that was the third largest economy on planet Earth at the time. Roll tape.
That's a record streak of job creation. And it's come as we've been working to reform our schools.
Stop the tape. If this gentleman were Pinocchio, I believe his nose would be shattering that camera lens right now. Reform schools? In what way? Running up the biggest amount of debt on student loans in world history, $1.2 trillion? The U.S. economy has remained sluggish for 6 long-plus years for one reason, and because of one man, Barack Hussein Obama.
According to the latest Quinnipiac poll, President Barack Obama is the worst president since World War II. You would think that he would understand that the American people don't like his policies or onto him, but no, he just said, sue me if you don't like it. I'll do what I want.
But Obama, he doesn't care. All he cared about was getting reelected so he could continue his radical agenda. On the economy, Obama's grade is clearly an F. Obamonomics is either an outright failure or worse, the president's economic plan is designed to harm the economy. On health care, F. Obamacare speaks for itself. People hate it and are going to show their disdain in November. On the Constitution, F-. This president has done more to shred the Constitution than any other in U.S. history. Foreign policy, F. It's a disaster. On this issue, Obama truly believed he could give a few speeches and the world would follow. Billions of people around the world would adhere to his vision. And it is Obama's foreign policy narcissism that clearly shows this president's self-aggrandizement, his huge and unwavering ego. And on the spirit of America, the unification of this country, F for the post-racial president. Obama is a divider. He is constantly pitting blacks against whites, rich against poor, one class versus another class, and man against woman.
Parents who work full-time should earn enough to pay the bills.
Stop the tape. Where is he even going with a line like that? Of course, we all want people to make enough money to pay the bills, but what business is it of the President of the United States? He doesn't belong here. He doesn't belong to stick his nose in the free markets, but of course he always does. Roll tape.
To head off to work every day knowing that their children are in good hands.
Stop the tape. That's kind of scary coming from him because you know where he's going to go with that, and that is part of the nanny state. We need government to take care of the children.
President Obama will go down as perhaps the worst president in the history of the United States! Exclamation point at real Donald Trump. Well, at real Donald Trump, at least I will go down as a president.